All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the May DevCast for Genesys. My name is Jim Crispino. I'll be your host and speaker today. And the topic we're going to be covering today is how to create Genesys Cloud custom client apps and utilize the client app SDK. So this one's near and dear to my heart. I've been writing custom client apps for Genesys Cloud for many years. It's one of my favorite topics in terms of developing for Genesys. And we'll get into the fun of it here in just a moment. But before we go, we've got a few logistics to cover off. So I will try and maintain a 10-minute Q&A at the end of this tutorial. If you have a question while I'm presenting, please post it into the Q&A, not the chat, but into the Q&A button on Zoom. And that will allow me to look at those when I'm done and try to answer your questions. Also, we are recording this, and we will record this and upload it to our YouTube channel, which you can find easily through our developer center at developer.genesys.cloud/video. There's a video link right on the landing page of the developer center, so you can get to the DevCast series as well as some of the other video series that we have. And then lastly, just a plug for our DevCast next month. I apparently have a typo on my screen for next month on June. It'll be the second week of June when we open that, and you can register for those on at the Developer Center as well. Kind of down on the left-hand column at the lower right is the DevCast newsletter sign-up area where you can sign up for our newsletter that comes monthly and our DevCast reminder, which comes monthly. And then if you have any topics you would like to have covered, you can use this link, tinyurl.com/devcast-survey, or email janessa.barrera@genesys.com, and we'll see that those topics get scheduled throughout the rest of the year. All right, with that, I am going to stop with the slides, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and switch to a different share. So one moment while I do that. All right. The one time I will have you use the chat, I assume you all can see my desktop with Genesys Cloud logged in. Is that correct? Can somebody put that in the chat and confirm you can see that? Oh, okay. Well, people are reacting. That's good enough for me. I don't need a chat message. The reactions are great. All right. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to move that out of my way a little bit. All right. To start with, let's talk about what client apps are. Genesys Cloud is, as you can see here, agents, supervisors, administrators, they all log into Genesys Cloud through the web browser or through our desktop app. And the UI is ours, right? Genesys wrote this UI, but we are well aware that we're not going to satisfy every condition that's necessary. We're not going to have every bit of functionality that you may require for your unique business needs. So we have the ability for you to write what we call custom client apps. What those are is the ability for Genesys to host an iframed web application somewhere in the user interface. There's a couple of areas. We're going to go through those areas on where those can be hosted. Before I really get into showing you client apps, I want to go to the resource center. So I would suggest everyone always start with reading documentation. Let me make this not such an eye chart. And if I put in client apps, just put client apps and see what we get, should be right here, about client application integrations. So with that, there are two types of client apps. We have just generic client applications, and then we have what we call interaction widgets. And I'll explain the distinction between the two. But if you want to set up client apps, you can certainly go to those articles. I will paste those into the chat in case you want to link to that and review those. But Setting up a client app or setting up an interaction widget is very straightforward through Genesys Cloud Admin. I will walk through those details in a bit. We're also going to talk about the development aspect of those. So if I go to the Genesys Cloud Developer Center and I put in a similar search, Genesys Client Apps SDK. So that'll take you to the platform section, to integrations, and to client apps. And if you click the overview, kind of start with the overview, there's a series of articles on the left that will explain what client apps are, how they can work from a development perspective, and the API associated with it. So we have an API that allows that embedded iframe to actually interact with Genesys Cloud. It can talk to Genesys Cloud to the user interface and make it do certain things. And so we'll go through those aspects here in just a minute. But let me put that link in the chat as well. So if you guys want to bookmark that, bring that up and bookmark that. So with, I'll walk through the development aspect here while I'm here. We have 3 areas where we can contain client apps. We have what we call the widget sidebar. And when I say that, I'm going to say widget sidebar because we also have interaction widgets. They both use the term widget, but they are 2 completely separate areas and different ways of interacting with user interfaces. So the widget sidebar lives in the Genesys Cloud UI on the left-hand nav bar. It's the little 4-block logo at the very bottom. You may or may not see it. If you don't have any sidebar widgets activated, you won't see that, that item. But I'll show you how to create one easily enough to make that visible in your own Genesys Cloud instance. We also have the standalone area, and I'm sorry, that screenshot is probably really small, but I'll show it to you here in a minute. But along the top nav bar of Genesys Cloud, if you have a custom client app defined to live in the, quote, standalone region, then an apps menu will become available, and you will have 1 or more apps off of that menu that you can select from, and those will be iframed. And then lastly, the 3rd iframe location that we have are what we call interaction widgets. So these are different than the sidebar widgets. These are widgets that are only visible while you're handling a conversation, and they are conversation specific. So they live off to the right-hand side. So today where you see maybe the profile widget and the wrap-up code widget and canned responses and kind of some of those that hang off to the right of handling an interaction, you can have a custom iframe tab over there, 1 or more, that allow you to have custom functionality available to agents while they're handling interactions. Couple more things on this page that I want to talk about. The URLs that you can iframe, we have parameters, predefined parameters that we can pass in. You can certainly have your own query parameters tacked onto the end of it, but Genesys Cloud has a few predefined items that you can pass in as parameterized values. So those can be these curly braces will be replaced with the actual language, the host environment, the target environment, the host origin, et cetera. I'll explain what those are as we get to those. They do not have to just be query parameters. They can be in the path. So if you wanted to do a route in Express or something like that, instead of passing things in as a query parameter, you could certainly pass them in the URL and use them in the route. We replace those as we load that iframe. We replace those values to modify the URL and then load that URL. Here are the 5 that we have. We have some deprecated tokens. So I want to bring this up. If you have already developed custom client applications, if you have existing ones on site that you're using, we are deprecating some of the older parameters that we could pass in. So we're switching from PC, which used to stand for Pure Cloud, which is what we used to call our product. We're switching to GC on the front of that and changing the names. We're changing the values that they contain. So the deprecation date, the cutoff date for when we will remove the old PC ones has not been set, but it's coming. I would encourage you, if you are using the older names, it might be a good idea to get something on a sprint or on a schedule to get those changed, because they will be changing soon. All right, we have the ability to have app icons. We have some demos. I'm going to show you these demos. This first batch that are hosted on GitHub, they are really simple. They are predefined. They work straight away. If you use these URLs, you don't have to modify any code. They will just work. And then we have some additional examples that have code that you will have to pull down, make a few tweaks, and host yourself, so that you can load those up. And the primary difference is these first 4 don't require any kind of OAuth, so they can run straight away in any org, while these additional 4, they require OAuth credentials. So you'll have to create an OAuth client. You'll have to take that client ID and put that in the code. And since you have to modify the code, you have to host it. It's got to be hosted at an HTTPS URL, et cetera, et cetera. So, so you can make those work. I'm not going to go through those today, but I will show you a couple of my own. And then we've got some advanced integration topics. You can scroll through this yourself. There's concepts on application pooling, like when we release iframes and resources and stuff. We have an event. We have a lifecycle event that tells you when your app is visible, when it's lost focus, when it's been shut down. I will be going through that. We can do localization as well. So you can localize your app. We'll pass in the language to you. And if you're using an I18N library, you can pull the appropriate language to display in your user interface should you choose to do that. The Client Apps SDK has an API around it. So the main entry point, the constructor for it, is the client app class. It has a constructor where you pass in, you have to have that GC host origin and that GC target environment. You have to have those 2 parameters that we can pass into your URL. You have to have those to initialize the Client Apps SDK. And then once you do that, there are a number of additional classes available to you that you can make use of. The core UI allows you to do like an open window. You can pop open a second browser instance. The Lifecycle API has lifecycle hooks for you to be notified of when you've been bootstrapped, when you're being shown, when you've lost focus, when you've gained focus. There's a number of APIs available here. You can read through the docs. I don't have time to go through each and every method that are in these classes. And then one final thing I would encourage you to read, because this can be, it's not as straightforward as you think. We have 2 SDKs. We have the Client Apps SDK, which I'm going to be talking about mostly today, which is the one that allows you to interact with the UI, with the Genesys Cloud UI. So your iframe can interact with Genesys Cloud. We also have the Platform SDK. So the Platform SDK is our larger API SDK wrapper. And it's very common to use both SDKs in a single iframed UI application. And initializing them together is maybe not as straightforward as you might think. It's not hard. It's not hard, but there's some things you have to take in account. And so we've enumerated those in this article. I'd encourage you to read through this, understand how you can initialize both SDKs and use them in your code. All right, with that, I'm done ranting about documentation and how to get started. Let's go play around and get some stuff set up. So I'm going to hop back to Genesys Cloud here. And so start out with creating a custom client app is done in admin. So you've got to have admin access, and it's done under integrations. You go to integrations and you click on add integration. We have 2 separate integration types in here that I'm going to be talking about today. The first one is a client application. So you can do click install for client application. We'll call this, let's do Wikipedia. Let's put Wikipedia into our user interface, because that's just dead easy. Wikipedia.org. The application type. So for this is a client application. So this can live off of the apps menu or off of the widget sidebar. Client apps, that's the only two locations they're available. Interaction widgets are something separate. So for a client app, that iframe can be launched from the apps menu or the widget sidebar. So you have two choices. You can pick standalone, which puts it up on the apps menu, or you can pick widget, which puts it on the left-hand nav bar. And if your iframe needs access to certain things, it needs to show modal dialogues, or it needs to allow forms, or it needs access to the microphone or the camera, or any of the iframe allows flags that you might need, you can specify. We also have content security policy flags that iframes allow you to specify. So we would allow you to list those should you need them. Sorry, one thing I glossed over, the application category. So if you pick the standalone item, your app will live off of the apps menu. It can also live off of the directory menu, or it can live off it's called Contact Center Insights, but it's the performance menu. So you can add things to the directory menu, the performance menu, or just the generic apps menu. So if you don't select anything, it's going to show up on apps. Otherwise, you can select those other two. You need to select a group. So apps are only visible to certain groups of agents or supervisors or whoever. So let me select, I have an everyone group in my org. I'll pick that, make that available. I will save. So that's all it takes to iframe Wikipedia. Basically give it a name on the details screen. I give it a URL, tell it where I want it to show up and to which group of agents I want it to show up. I'll save. I'm going to reload. So this is not it's not a live change. You need to reload or log out and log back in. Any new user logging in for the day that's in that group would see it. But if I go to my apps menu now, all right, I make this mistake every single time. So I didn't activate it. So I'm going to activate this. You'd think after years and years of doing this, I would remember to do that, but I don't. All right, so now I'll reload. And now on my apps menu, hit reports, apps, I see Wikipedia. So if I click Wikipedia, Wikipedia is going to be iframe, right? Really easy. Nothing special about that. Let's go. I didn't pass it any parameters. Wikipedia is obviously not using the Genesys SDK. So it's literally just iframing a URL, some quick, easy link I want agents to have available. I can also move that to the widget sidebar panel. I will save that. I'm going to reload. It's already activated, so I'll just reload. And it will no longer be on apps. Notice Wikipedia is gone from the apps menu because it's not in the standalone area. It's over here on the left under the widget sidebar. And it doesn't have it has just our generic box icon. And there's Wikipedia on the sidebar. These locations, both the apps menu and the widget sidebar, they're good locations for something agents will go to when they're not handling interactions, because the navigation to handling an interaction is a little clunky. So you can see if I'm an agent and I'm sitting here and I have to go to the widget sidebar, it takes away my interactions, and so I go back and it's a context shift. It's not very nice. Okay. If let's switch that back to the apps menu. Because I want to show you that's also a tad bit clunky. And let me reload. All right, load up Wikipedia. Now, this one's not as clunky as the widgets, okay? So the widgets are good for things that an agent's going to go to and have to make that context shift. This, the apps menu, or the standalone location, as we call it, does allow the user to kind of see the app while they're handling conversations. However, and you might think about using this location to do work that is interaction specific. That's not a great idea. It can be done. It's not impossible, but this iframe has no knowledge of the current interaction that the user has in focus. So that's the hardest thing to tell, is that if I'm an agent and I'm handling 3 or 4 chats at a time, and I'm on a specific chat, your iframe here won't know which chat I have selected. And it's not the easiest thing to go through the list of interactions and find the active one, because Genesys Cloud does not always mark the one that is currently active. So I would recommend you don't do an interaction specific work in the standalone location, even though it's side to side here. This is good for dashboards. It's good for things that an agent might need to have in view while they're working across conversations. But if you're doing conversation specific items, I would encourage you to do an interaction widget, which we'll talk about here in a moment. So in terms of that, we have those example apps. So I want to show you what's possible with the Client Apps SDK. So I have defined in my list of integrations, I've gone and installed 4 instances of a client app, and I've prefixed all of mine with DevCast. So I have the help demo, I have the lifecycle demo, the toast example, and URL interpolation. Those are the 4 I'm going to run through right now. Each of those uses the hosted URL. So if we go look at the lifecycle, it's just the mypurecloud.github.io, which is where we're hosting our stuff up on our GitHub repo. So you can just load that HTML in, and I'm passing in the lang tag and the target environment and the host origin, because those are using the Client Apps SDK. So to initialize that SDK properly, it needs those parameters passed into it. So if I go look, let's start with the help demo. This is maybe the least useful for you guys. This can show help articles in Genesys Cloud. So if I were just to pick an article, if for some reason you wanted to make certain Genesys Cloud Resource Center articles available to users from within your app, you could do that. Like if they needed to set something up, if a supervisor needed instructions on how to set up an agent, you wanted to provide a helpful link right from your user interface to that article, you could do that. And it pops up the help article in Genesys Cloud using the help icon in the lower left. So any of those will just pop up the URL that you're using. So that's the help, should you find that useful. The next one's the lifecycle demo, and the lifecycle demo is really useful, I think. This is going to load, give it a second. So you see this little pop-up. So this is a toast. I'm going to go through the toast example here in a moment, but the lifecycle app, as we load that iframe, we can inject events in to let you know what state your app is in. So we have a couple. We have bootstrapping. We tell you when your app has been or is in bootstrapping, so that you can load up resources. This would be the initialization time of your app. While you're running, we can send you a blur or a focus event. So focus is a user just clicked on your tab, or your iframe has just become visible. And so if you get that focus event, maybe you can reset your UI, you could, go look at the current state of things. Maybe you need to figure out all the interactions they're working on. So when you gain focus, you can take some action event to not totally initialize, but maybe reset or look things up. And then blur just lets you know you've gone away. If you need to release resources while you're blurred, you can do that. And stop is an event when we unload your iframe. It will, the stop event will occur. So we try not to unload iframes. We do have a life cycle iframes that's in the docs for the client apps SDK. There is a period of time after enough iframes are loaded. If Genesys Cloud needs resources, we can remove iframes, and we will send the stop event to you and let you know we're unloading your iframe. And so then the next time you load up, it'll go through the whole bootstrap again, and then you'll get a focus event and et cetera. So just know you can get a stop event to let you know. And this is even a log. If I navigate away, so there the app is blurred. If I come back to that app, it got app focused. And I'm not going to easily be able to show you stopped because I can't force an unload of this iframe. But you do get to see the events that happened and the order that they happened in. So that's a good one to go look through the code and see how they handled that. The toast example is a nice example. So it's on my iframe, but it just got blurred. So here we can put a title, my title, my message to show to the user. You can use an info, success, or error. So those little toast messages that show up there, they can have a different icon displayed to indicate to the user whether it's just an informational message, a success message, an error message, something happened. If you give a message ID 23ABC and you use that same message ID, you can replace, instead of stacking toast messages, you can replace the existing toast message with a new one. And you can even set a timeout for how long it will be shown. And you can have a close button. So if we click the send toast, there's my message, and I can have a toast button. If I have to reload, do I? Didn't think I needed to reload. Maybe I do. Let me reload. Thought you could send multiple toasts through that. So my title, my message. Maybe I needed to change the message. So I could pick that again. If you set a timeout and you don't have a close button, they will have to see that message. It'll disappear in 5 seconds. There it goes, gone away. Yeah, it clears the messages. So you can, if you just type a new message, then the button comes active again. That's what I was missing there. So you can play with that. The attention count does not work here on the apps menu. So attention count would show you, like on your phone where you have 15 text messages waiting to be read, it shows you a count. We don't exactly show a count, but we show a splat on the widgets panel. On this icon over here, we can show a splat there. We don't do it on the apps menu. So that's of little use when you're in the standalone mode. And then we've got the open window handler. Clicking on a link. So this one's important. When we iframe your application, Genesys Cloud Engineering has decided to not allow the direct click of links to open another iframe. There's a security vulnerability they're concerned about there. So if you have an anchor tag visible that can be clicked on, it's not going to work. It's just, we're not going to show that pop up. You need to use the open window method in the client apps SDK to open another window. So if you wanted to open Wikipedia in another tab or another browser window, you could do that using the open window method. So the last one that I want to show you is URL interpolation. So these are those parameters we can pass in. So in this case, the URL that we had set up is going to load with these values. And you can see we parsed out, we forgot to change PC lang tag to GC lang tag there, but host origin and target, you can see the values that came into that. And had we passed in another language instead of US English, this welcome message would have been in Spanish or French or whatever languages are localized in that example. So you can play with those examples, kind of get an idea how they work. Let me see if I've got I want to show you the splats on the widget panels. Give me 1 second to switch that one over there. I think I have it. DevCast toast example sidebar. Yes. Oh, I do have it there. I already had it there. So it's this toast one. Okay. So if I use the increase attention count, so the logo over here, the icon over here has nothing to it, but if I increase the attention count, you can show something there. So that's useful. Like if you have an application watching messages in an unmonitored queue, or you've got messages that just arrived and you want to make the user aware of them, you can use the attention count method to bring that splat. We don't actually number it. We don't show you how many attention counts there are, but you can set it, you can clear it. So I just wanted to show you how that works. That only works in the widget sidebar. So the last iframe area I want to show you is interaction widgets. And I'm going to go to integrations. I'm going to show you how to set up Wikipedia as an interaction widget. So we went to integrations and clicked add integration. And before we went to client application, but here we're going to scroll a little ways down and we're going to find interaction widgets. So it's a similar icon, but it's got the agent headset to indicate that this is an interaction widget. So let's go ahead and install that. All this Wikipedia interaction widget. So we'll go ahead and just really quick and easy put this available to agents. I will select my everyone group again. Interaction widgets have 2 additional items you can set. You can set a queue, so this can only be visible to certain agents, certain groups of agents that are even in a certain queue, so down to the queue level, and even a certain interaction type. So I'll just go ahead and select these. If you leave them blank, that's fine. If you don't select any queues, it says leaving blank will result in no queue filtering. And the same here, leaving blank will result in no communication type filtering. So this interaction widget would be available to all queues and all interaction types. I'll just select it here because I know that works. I'm going to save this. I'm going to reload to have that change take effect. I don't think I activated again. So give me a second to go activate that. What do we call that? Wikipedia interaction widget. We activate that. All right, I'm going to reload one more time. All right, now interaction widgets are only available while handling an interaction. So I've got to put on my agent cap here. Let me get here and go on queue. And let me put a call in. Give me a moment to put that in.
Hello, thanks for calling the DevCast interaction proxy widget call. So you are.
Press 1 here.
Please wait while I find an available agent.
So okay, all right. So I've actually got an interaction widget showing here, but here is my Wikipedia. Here's my Wikipedia interaction widget. It doesn't have a logo because I didn't set a logo. I'm going to show you that here in just a moment. These can be branded icons, or they can have an icon that indicates the purpose. You guys are probably aware of these 6 or 7. There can be 6 or 7 built-in interaction widgets, but you can have custom ones. And here we've got Wikipedia interaction widget. The next one I want to show you is this one, and I'm going to show you the configuration of this here in just a second. So this is the one I built for this demonstration. So it is what I call a widget proxy, and I'll explain why I'm doing this here in a moment. But in its default operation, it's just an interaction widget. It loads up, it gets the parameters, and this one I have not updated to, I have to put this in my own sprint. I have not updated my PC variables to the new GC ones yet. So mine are still working off the old ones. But it goes ahead, it gets the environment and the language. One additional thing it gets is this conversation ID. So interaction widgets are conversation aware. If in my conversation roster over here, I had multiple interactions going on, each interaction would have its own iframe instance of this widget, and the conversation ID would be different for each iframe instance of this, of my code. That allows my code to come up and initialize for that specific conversation. And as I switch between them, the iframe will change to the iframe that's specific for that conversation. This one, it's not very flashy. This is my bootstrap sample. I start all of my interaction widgets from this chunk of code because it initializes the SDKs right and sets everything up. One of the first things it does after it gets that conversation ID, it initializes the platform SDK and goes to call the get conversation by ID API method. And I show the conversation here. You could also initialize the notification API to subscribe to events for this conversation so that, if it's put on hold or the customer releases or whatever, you will be notified of events dynamically in your widget, and you can react to those events and you can make things known. So this is my base interaction widget. And let me go hang this up. Process this. Let me show you a little bit about how that interaction widget works with the icon and some of the parameters and stuff. So DevCast. DevCast, let me find it. DevCast interaction widget. All right, on the configuration tab, it's the same as we've done, right? It's on my GitHub instead of the Pure Cloud one. I have my own GitHub repo with this and my URL to my code, and I'm using the same parameters that I'm passing in to initialize the SDK. On the interaction widget, if you click on the advanced tab, you can specify an icon. I have a monochromatic icon specified. It's just a hosted SVG icon that shows up that allows me to brand that tab with something recognizable that the agent could click on instead of using that generic box icon. I've also set the lifecycle events that I want to be notified of, so that when my app is bootstrapped or loses focus or gains focus, I can know. And then that ephemeral, that's if you can ask Genesys Cloud to do all that it can to not unload your iframe. So if you say ephemeral false, it'll do everything it can to keep your iframe in memory once it's loaded. It's not a guarantee that they won't unload you, but you can at least request it. So, but the icon's really nice for setting that up. So then my interaction widget, I want to show you this because if you are coming from Genesys Engage, where you've been using GVP and Designer, the IVR part of Engage, and you're using WWE, the agent desktop for Engage, you've had the ability to pop custom tabs. And it works very much like interaction widgets. They're very comparable, but Engage allowed you to use any attached data. We call it participant attributes in Genesys Cloud, but you can use any attached data field as the URL to pop in that iframe. Genesys Cloud is not quite that flexible, but it can be done. And that's what my interaction widget proxy does. I wrote this to kind of simulate that behavior. So my interaction widget loads up the conversation JSON, scans the participant attributes, and looks for a specific key called proxy.url. So let me show you how that works. I am going to go to admin, and I am going to go to architect. And give it a second. All right, inbound call flow. Let's go down to the DevCast interaction widget proxy. I have just a really, really simple IVR here. Does a hello, does a transfer block. I'm going to edit this. I'm going to drop in on the data, I'm going to drop in a set participant data. I'm going to add proxy.url as the key, and I'm going to add HTTPS. Let's just do Wikipedia again, because it's easy, and we'll save, and we'll publish. Back to Genesys Cloud. I'm still on queue. Let me put another call in. So before, my interaction widget proxy just loaded up and showed you the conversation JSON.
Hello.
Let me press 1.
Please wait while I find an available agent.
All right, and there, I should have warned you to watch closely. It flashed from that JSON view into Wikipedia. So what it did was that call came in, it loaded up, it did that conversation JSON, the get conversation by ID call, scanned the attribute data and found the proxy URL and redirected. It did a window.location.href to pop to that URL. So my point of showing you that is in your architect flow, you can attach pieces of data that you can either in your widget, you can combine into a URL, or you can set an entire URL here and just pop that. You can do something similar with agent scripting, right? You can use the web component in an agent script to do something similar, but using an interaction widget allows you to have an agent script over here and whatever iframe or whatever web app you would have put into that web component, you can have that in a separate tab and not have to bother with the agent script. So I find that very useful, and I think if you're coming from the Engage world, that can be helpful as well to kind of bring that functionality that Engage has over to Genesys Cloud. So let me hang that up. I am nearly done with showing you guys. I want to show you a few more things. So a couple of interaction widgets that I've built. So along with my interaction widget proxy, somebody posted in the community forums, in the Genesys community forums, they wanted a list of favorites made available to their agents, just button clicks that they could use to transfer to a known number or transfer to, I got to put another call in to show you that. So Genesys, while we have favorites.
Thanks for calling the DevCast.
Get into here.
Please wait while I find an available agent.
All right. While we have favorites, right? We have the directory, and when you do a transfer, you know, you can look up targets easily enough. But if you wanted to make a list of interaction favorites available, I wrote this really quick interaction widget. It looks for an external organization called favorites, and it takes any contacts that are in that favorites organization and just displays them here. Here I've got a queue. I could transfer this call to a queue. I could send it to a specific user, or I can send it to an external number just with one button click. And you know, that's not native Genesys functionality, but it's something that would make the lives of an agent easier. And you know, it's ways that you can write and extend the user interface of Genesys Cloud. Another handy one, let me hang this up. Before we had this capability, Genesys is primarily a push technology, right? Push calls, push message interactions, push emails to agents. Pushing is great. Sometimes you want to pull functionality, right? Sometimes you just want agents to go look and see what's out there that they can work on. And email especially, right? You might have an unmonitored queue, a queue with no agents that emails come into, and agents can go out to that queue and just check from time to time if emails are available. And before we had the ability in the performance menu to go in, assign those to users, my team wrote this little widget app. This runs on the sidebar widget. This looks at a queue. It looks at a specific queue, and it goes and finds the emails that are in that queue. And I can say, oh yeah, this email's been sitting out there for almost 2 hours, right? It's from Jim Crispino. This was the test. This is kind of what the body looks like. I can get a short idea of what the body message was. And if I think that's something that I can handle, I can click this assign to me, and it'll send that interaction to me, and I can handle that email. So it's more of a pull, less of a push, right? But it comes to the agent just as if it were pushed to the agent. I can do everything I can do that I would normally be able to function with that email. So again, you can write and extend the functionality of Genesys Cloud by writing your own custom client apps and interaction widgets. The last thing I want to show you, and then I'm gonna leave. I'm not gonna have 10 minutes for questions, but I'll leave a few minutes. I want to show you how to troubleshoot stuff. So let me get rid of this email. Look it done. Let me send another call in.
Hello, thanks for calling the DevCast. Please wait while I find an available agent.
I'm going to answer this. Give me a second. Sorry, I'm sorry for the feedback, folks. All right, so you're developing your interaction widget, and you need to troubleshoot what's going on in it, right? Maybe like with mine that does the proxy, maybe it's not finding that proxy URL on the parameters, right? If you go to the developer tools of the browser, okay, so you go to the source, and I'm sorry for what Chrome doesn't allow me to make the size of this larger, but if you scroll to, let's see, I gotta find it. That's the widgets. That's Wikipedia. I am not gonna get there. This might not be the best one to show you guys. Let's do favorites interaction widget. All right, so this one, this is hosted at my GitHub. If I go into here and I go into the JavaScript and I go to favorites, I can see my code. And maybe I want to troubleshoot from logging in. So let me scroll up to right where I'm going to do the implicit grant login, right? I could set a breakpoint. I'm going to reload. It's going to release that call, but I don't really care. It's going to reload my code. 1 second, wait for it. And, oh, it did hang up that call. There, here it comes. I'm going to load my favorites, and there's my breakpoint. Okay, so now I'm in my code of my widget, and I can step through my code. I timed out. So if you're working, make sure to set your after call work timeout to something just enormous, right? So, or disable after call work so you don't have to, so it doesn't time out. But use the browser developer tools. You can find those apps in the list. Usually they're under like Ember or something or other. You can find them there, and you can set breakpoints. So that's how I troubleshoot everything, is just use the browser developer tools. You can also run this stuff in a separate iframe. You can run it outside of Genesys Cloud, interestingly enough, and it'll operate in a similar manner as long as you pass it the right parameters. So with that, let me go look and see what we have in the Q&A and see if I can get some of these answered. Okay, so this is easy. Recordings will be shared with us. Yes, it'll be put on our YouTube channel. So go to Developer Center, Genesys Cloud Developer Center, go to the videos, big button on the very front of the screen, go to DevCasts, and you can click on any one of these to find that. This will take you out to YouTube. You'll be able to find our community channel. All right. I have issues displaying the icon to be shown. The sizing never seems to work for me. That's from Martin Bunting. Yeah, Martin, there are some rules about the icons. So if you go Client Apps, SDK, and under the advanced in the life cycle, it's not life cycle, hold on. It's application icons. It's under the overview section. So there's different sizes. If you use the vector, if you use an SVG, SVGs are great because we can size those any size we want. Otherwise, you need to specify a very specific size, and we'll pick the appropriate one for the location that it's on. I would highly recommend trying to use a vector. Try to generate an SVG logo for that. It works fantastic. And where can I find the detail instructions on building out an interaction widget? So there's no specific instructions. Again, that's from Martin Bunting. There's no specific instructions on an interaction widget. It is simply a client app. If you look at this using client apps with the platform SDK, this is pretty much, you know, if you pull this code, this will help you bootstrap any kind of client app. And then an interaction widget's just going to get one extra query parameter, and that's the conversation ID. So it really is no different than any other kind of widget. All right. And then Sarab is, I frame the recommended way of integrating custom in-house CRMs with Genesys Cloud Web. That's a good one, Sarab. There's two schools of thought. If your CRM allows it and it works nicely, you could, in theory, embed the CRM in an iframe inside of Genesys Cloud. That's if you want Genesys Cloud to be your sole user interface, right? And the agents will see a rendering of the CRM. Maybe you pop a specific contact or account record in the iframe. If that works for your method of operation, that's great. But the other thing we have is the embeddable framework. So that's also under the platform. This is just a little up from the client apps. The embeddable framework reverses that, where the CRM is your source of truth, and Genesys Cloud has a small, let's see if it's here. I'm not going to be able to show you maybe a user interface of it. There's some in the resource center, but it's a small user interface that can be embedded in the CRM. And it's really built around, the embeddable framework's built around embedding in a CRM. That's the whole point of it. So that might be a better option for you if you're looking at doing CRM work. Could we use Salesforce URL in the widgets? Yes, you can. if Salesforce allows embedding in iframes, which I'm not, more and more apps are not allowing iframe. Like you can't embed Google. Google just does not allow Google to be iframed. That's why I always go with Wikipedia for my examples. If Salesforce allows you to iframe Salesforce, then yes, you could build the URL in the IVR, just like I did with the proxy URL, attach that as attribute data, and pop that in an interaction widget. So totally possible. And then Saurabh, you had a second question. Can you also have your CRM view as part of the interaction widgets? Can you also have your CRM view as part of the interaction widgets so that they are separate for each interaction? If the CRM allows it. So some CRMs kind of work as a single page app. So technically you have 4 iframes embedded. Let's say you have 4 interactions going, right? And you had each interaction has an iframe view of that CRM. If you set the URL to show a contact record, and that's like a single page app, it may set the contact record for each of those 4 interactions being the same. Where if it's not a single page kind of app, that would work better, because then each iframe would contain the correct contact record specifically. So I guess, Saurabh, my point is your mileage may vary. You're just going to have to try that one out and see what your CRM allows for, if you do want to embed that as an interaction widget. Here, Richard Tomasetti. I would like to know if I can get users' calls by day using the API. You can. You would have to use the analytics API and create a query that gives an interval, a start and an end time, and say, I want all conversations in this time for this user. You give the user ID as input, and that'll get you a list of the user's calls by day. You can find how to do that, actually, if you go to the performance menu, go to workspace, and on the interactions workspace, if you put the right filter criteria in here where you want calls, and you put the right user, and you pick the right date, and then you open the browser developer tools and watch what we send to that API to get that list, you'll see exactly how to get those calls by user by day. Can you show us the code for the cherry pick email? Christopher Peters, if you want that code, email me or send me a message or something. Get in touch with me and I'll get you that code. All right. James Dunn, I really wanted to join the call, but I've only been able to attend the last few minutes. Is there a recording? Yes, the recording will be on our developer center. I showed that. Answer live. All right. And then has there or will there be a DevCast on the embeddable framework? There has been. So Richard Schott, who is the product manager for that, did a DevCast on the embeddable framework a while ago. Let's see if we can find that. Videos, DevCast. Let's find embeddable. How to integrate Pure Cloud client functionality into any web app or CRM. So it's kind of one of the first ones we did. So we're at time. So I will let you go. I want to make one last comment. One thing I find useful, and I didn't show you guys this, but you can embed the Genesys Cloud Developer Center and developer the new standalone API. Let's see, Genesys Cloud. I think I have these. If you guys have to go, I understand. I'm just going to show these two real quick. Oh no, I deleted those. So one thing I find useful is use the client apps. And on my apps menu, I usually have a link to the Developer Center and a link to the API Explorer, the new standalone API Explorer. It just makes those two sites easily available to me within Genesys Cloud so that I can take advantage of those. So I wish I had time to show you guys that, but This went a little longer than I thought. So I appreciate the time today, and we'll catch you next month. You guys take care. Bye-bye.